at 4 of the main laws that have affected education in the United States over the years. They are the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, the Improving America's Schools Act of 1994, the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001, and the Every Student Succeeds Act of 2015. Let's start with the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965. There are 3 main parts of this law that I want to talk about today. They are Title I, Title V, and Title VII. But first, let me give you some background information. In 1965, Lyndon B. Johnson signed this act into law as part of his War on Poverty. He sought to allocate additional funding to low-income and underfunded areas, but I'll talk more about this in just a minute. The most well-known part of this act is Title I. Title I is all about allocating funding to schools with high proportions of low-income students. The basic idea is to close the gap between inner-city schools and suburban schools. If you've ever heard someone talking about a Title I school, this is what they mean. In order to be considered a Title I school, there must be at least 40% enrollment of students who are classified as low income by the U.S. government. Title V is all about strengthening states' departments of education by funding local programs that are in line with state goals. It also placed a special emphasis on gifted programs, foreign languages, physical education, the arts, and mental health of students. Finally, Title VII focused on bilingual education. Although it was originally only created for Spanish-speaking students, Title VII was transformed into the Bilingual Education Act in 1968. This act, while not mandating that all schools offer a bilingual education program, did specify that instruction should be done in both English and the student's native language. We still see the effects of this act in schools today through separate classes for English language limited students. The goal of these classrooms is to integrate students into the traditional classroom with their peers as soon as possible, while still allowing them a chance to succeed in school while they learn English. Since it was enacted in 1965, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act has gone under multiple revisions. In addition to needing to be reauthorized every few years, the Act has undergone 3 especially major revisions, each of which is an act separate from the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. The first of these 3 revisions, the Improving America's Schools Act, was enacted in 1994 under the Clinton administration. Although it did reauthorize the original Elementary and Secondary Education Act, it also included the following changes. 1. It altered the Title I program by providing extra help to disadvantaged students. At the same time, it began holding Title I schools accountable for their test results at the same level as other schools. 2. It also included a section on creating safe and drug-free schools for students. This was the first attempt at creating a drug-free school environment. 3. This revision also called for a large increase in funding for bilingual education. This increase in funding was to allow schools to be more effective in implementing bilingual education. 4. Finally, this act added funding for education technology programs in schools. The next large revision to this act came in 2001 with the No Child Left Behind Act. Like the Improving America's Schools Act, it was another reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. But this time, major changes were made. First, it required that all states establish state academic standards and testing systems that were on par with the federal requirements. These standards were then to be tested and must be met by the schools. Schools were required to make adequate yearly progress, or AYP, which was measured by student performance on state-mandated tests. If a school did not meet adequate yearly progress for 2 or more years, or if the school was deemed an unsafe environment, students were given the option of transferring to another public school in order to receive the education they deserve. If a school failed to meet AYP for 4 consecutive years, the district was required to implement at least one of the following corrective actions: replace school staff, implement a new curriculum, decrease the authority of school-level administration, appoint outside experts to advise the school, extend the school year or school day, or restructure the internal organization of the school. If a school still failed to meet AYP after 5 consecutive years, they were required to create a plan to completely restructure the school. If they continued to fail into the 6th year, they were required to implement the plan they created during year 5. One of the biggest critiques of No Child Left Behind is that this has led teachers to teach to the test. The emphasis placed on test scores makes it so that the students actually learning is no longer what is most important. Instead, it is the student's ability to pass standardized tests that matters. This has also affected the amount of time spent on subjects such as art, physical education, and music. Schools are not given anything for spending time and money on these subjects, so they often have to cut these programs in order to make more time for English and math, the 2 subjects most under scrutiny under No Child Left Behind. Each of these acts has had a different effect on the classroom teachers. Currently, the most difficult pressure placed on classroom teachers by the Every Student Succeeds Act is the pressure by schools to teach to the test. Many teachers did not get into teaching to make sure students pass a standardized test. Rather, they chose the profession because they believe in education, and they want to help students learn to love learning. Much of the creativity has been stripped from classroom curricula in favor of teaching to the test. That is something that future teachers, myself included, must be careful to keep in mind as they enter the classroom. Teaching to the test may help in the short term, but the question remains, what does that do for students in the long term? Does it help them, or does it ultimately hurt them?